72 hours ago, the SNP held 48 seats at Westminster. Now you've got 9. What happened?
Well, I mean, I think clearly the story of the night is Labour's landslide, albeit it's achieved on quite a small percentage of the vote, I think about a third of the vote across the UK. Although in fairness to Labour, their vote went up very significantly in Scotland. Personally, in my former constituency of Edinburgh South West, I saw, as soon as the postal votes were opened and as the night progressed, a collapse in the Tory vote, and I could see the Tory vote moving over to Labour. But we also lost SNP votes. And it was difficult to persuade people to vote SNP in this election. Many constituents, or my former constituents, said to me on the doorstep, I would vote for you, Joanna, but I just can't vote SNP this time. And I think 2 things have really happened to the party. First of all, our core support and people who believe passionately in the cause of Scottish independence. And remember, if you ask, opinion polls show regularly that about 50% of people in Scotland support the idea that Scotland should become an independent nation state. But that core support was very disillusioned at the party's failure to progress the cause of independence and failure to take advantage of some of the opportunities that were presented to us during the Brexit saga and also during the Boris Johnson premiership. And on the other hand, there were a lot of people who in the past have voted for us in Scotland who didn't necessarily support independence, but saw us as a strong and competent government at Holyrood.
I was going to ask you.
Yes, competence, and also a party that governed with integrity. And I'm very afraid to say, I'm not ashamed because it's not down to me, but I am afraid to say and ashamed for my party that both our reputation of governing competently and our reputation for integrity, that we are different from what went before, has taken a severe battering in the last couple of years.
Am I right then in saying that you think that the current leadership, which is basic continuity, Nicola Sturgeon, lacks competence and integrity?
No, I think it's not fair to blame the people who were left holding the baby when Nicola Sturgeon suddenly resigned. John Swinney has only been in post, I think, for a couple of months, and most of that time has been taken up with what was an unexpectedly early general election campaign. And if anyone could bring the SNP together and resolve issues, then you might argue it would be John Swinney, because he's so widely respected in the party. I've known John since we were teenagers in the Young Scottish Nationalists in Edinburgh in the late 70s. And he has very widespread support and respect in the party. But if he is to maintain that support, he is going to have to acknowledge the enormity of this setback and address the reasons why it happened.
And can those reasons, to some extent, be summed up in 2 words, Nicola Sturgeon? And does she owe your colleagues, the 38 who lost their seats, and the voters, an apology?
I think she does. I don't think you can ever blame a setback like this on one person. However, Nicola Sturgeon was a very strong leader who brooked no debate and no dissent, as I know to my considerable cost. She ran the party the way that she wanted it. She inherited an incredible legacy from Alex Salmond and after the independence referendum, where although we had lost the independence referendum, we had advanced support for it very considerably. She was re-elected as First Minister in a wave of optimism, as we were, those of us who were elected in 2015, when the SNP got 56 out of the then 59 Scottish seats. And then thereafter, she was presented with a series of opportunities after the Brexit referendum, and during particularly the early years of Boris Johnson's premiership before he got his majority in 2019, that ought to have been able to have been exploited to further the cause of independence. And there has been a huge strategic failure to do that. And there has also been a failure to win over those who were as yet unconvinced of the merits of the cause. Now, when the SNP was riding high, it was because we were seen as competent. People started to have more confidence in the idea that Scotland could be a self-governing nation because the SNP had performed competently at Holyrood.
I also get the point that you get the sense that you also think this is also an issue of the character of the Sturgeon government. You, as it were, fell out with her about a number of things, but including the issue of gender recognition and so on. Did you feel that in the end you were basically excluded and shut out of
Oh,
your own party?
absolutely. I mean, in recent years, I've been associated with being a critic of self-identification, not a critic of trans rights. I myself am a lesbian. I'm a human rights lawyer. Of course, I support human rights for everyone and equality for everyone. What I don't support is the right of any man to self-identify as a woman with next to no safeguards. And my views on that are in line with public opinion in Scotland. But what happened with the Gender Recognition Reform Act in Scotland, with the SNP, is a microcosm of everything that was wrong with Nicola's leadership. It was an ill-thought-through policy that was never debated or voted for on the floor of the SNP conference. Legitimate concerns were dismissed. Those who had legitimate concerns were demonised, and we failed to take the public with us. That is a microcosm of how she governed. Long before I fell out with Nicola about gender recognition reform, I made myself very unpopular by suggesting that our independent strategy needed to be looked at and discussed. And I felt that she was reversing us very slowly up a blind alley on the independent strategy.
Is the outcome of all this, just very briefly, that independent is on the shelf for a while?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I think it's important to understand that it seems that support for the SNP has become decoupled from those who support independence.
Okay.
It wasn't a big issue on the doorsteps during the election campaign.
Okay.
But I think it would be foolish for the incoming Labour government, and certainly foolish for incoming new Scottish Labour MPs, to assume that the constitutional question is off the table in Scotland.
Okay. By the way, just quick yes or no question. Are you going to be standing for Holyrood next time round?
Well, I'm going to take some time to think about what I'm going to do, so I'm not ruling anything in or out at the moment.